This is going to be another simple exercise in brush control. Now I like to start with the eyes because the eyes tell a story. And Charlie Chaplin, his eyes tell a big story. A bit of sadness in them, but plenty of humour. Get that brush flowing through there. And what we're doing with these sort of exercises is trying to build up some muscle memory. So if you're not used to working with Signwriting brushes, chisels, they're a lot different to work with than artist brushes. Obviously, as you can see, the hairs are much longer. And what we're doing here is we're just using all parts of the brush. And it's getting us used to turning the brush in our fingers so that it becomes something that you don't have to think about. And that way, it allows you to build up the rhythm in the brush. And this one, we're using one shot black enamel and AS Handover's 2112 brushes, and number 4, which is this one, and then a bit later on we'll be using a number 6. And it's funny that the less you've got to work with, the more you start to pay attention. So I find when you paint in just black onto white, you're not chasing colour. You're paying attention to where the light stops. And as you can see there, I'll try and zoom in on that. I'm just using the tip here of this brush so I can keep it moving. If I was doing straight lines, I'd be putting more pressure on. Now I'll put more pressure on. The more pressure that you get onto the brush, the more it splays out, and it spreads, the hair spread out more. So the brush control matters here. So you don't want to be fighting it. You just want to let the enamel flow. Have some fun while you're laying this paint down. As always, we've got this paint mixed up with just the right amount of drag, just so when you're laying your brush down, you've got a tiny bit of resistance. You don't want too much, otherwise you won't be able to lay the paint down smoothly. This is why we're using the number 4 here, because we've got some tiny little bits of highlight here and there that we just want to pick out, and we want the biggest brush we can use to help us do that. Too big and we won't be able to pick out those little details. Too small and it'll take us forever to do. The biggest mistake I see people making when they first pick up a Signwriting brush is how they hold it. And they try and hold it like a pen or a pencil. Which, you know, would be down there. But you don't. You hold it up there. So your fingers, you are just above the ferrule. And then you can roll it nicely between your fingers. It'll feel a bit unusual to start with, but it gives you much more control. And it's like a lot of things, you know, you start doing anything that's a challenge. When you first start, it's difficult getting used to those feelings. But you just got to persevere, keep practicing, and it becomes muscle memory. If you paint every day, and after a while, you'll stop thinking about it. You'll stop thinking about how to hold it. You'll just pick it up naturally. And you'll hold it slightly differently depending on what task you're doing. There's not a lot of difference, just slightly. But like I say, you won't even think about that. You'll just pick it up and paint. And that's why I'm showing these sort of exercises, because building up letter shapes and painting letter shapes is really difficult for people who are first starting. But I also think getting some brush control going while you're learning is a good thing. And of course, with these, they're quite quick to do, and you can be quite loose with them. I mean, I've laid down some marks, but I'm not trying to. It's not painting by numbers. These are just guides. So they're just guides for me to get the proportions, and I can change it as I go along. And it's basically showing you an easy way to get started and practice mixing the paint, getting it the right consistency, practice holding your brush, and have something to show for it at the end. It's starting with letters straight away. You need to be practicing, but it can be a little bit demoralizing. It looks so easy. It really isn't. So I want people to be encouraged to have a go. I don't want people to go, well, that's far too hard for me. Well, if you practice stuff like this and you develop control of the brush, everything else is going to be slightly easier. So when we're painting like this, it teaches you to see, it teaches you to look. We're just using black onto white. There's no distractions. I like painting these. So it reminds me of why I fell in love with the craft in the first place. Some simple tools. Get the rhythm of the flow going. And even with a bigger brush, we can work into these small areas, just making sure we turn the brush around and we use it on the other edge. It's a good exercise in getting used to working with a marl stick as well. I know there's a lot of sign writers and sign painters that don't use one, and I suppose that's personal preference. Well, when I was an apprentice in the UK, everybody was taught to use a mail stick. It wasn't an option in my apprenticeship. So I suppose different parts of the world teach things in different ways, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there are times when I don't use one. But I feel much more comfortable when I've got one in my hand. I suppose if it's good enough for the old masters, then it's good enough for me. Exercises like this will improve every sign you'll ever paint. It's brush discipline disguised as art. A bit more fun. So if you decide that this is something you want to take up, what you need to be doing is getting the right equipment. And with the brushes, don't be fooled into buying synthetic. I made that mistake when I was an apprentice. I thought, I can't afford to buy all these really expensive brushes. These are pure sable that I'm using now. And I bought some synthetic ones. And I tell you, they don't hold any paint. And they don't have the same spring or the same feel. So you're best buying one really good brush rather than several cheap imitation brushes. And once you've got a brush nicely worked in, you'll be so pleased you spent that extra money on a nice quality brush. There we go. Charlie Chaplin, just in black paint. Hope you enjoyed that. If you did, hit the subscribe button and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.